So, meditation, how's it going? If you don't ask now, you won't be able to. Thank you. Smooth sailing. Well, it's like that old poster I once saw in India. You can't, it's actually in the tourist bureau. I was always surprised at it. It was like this sadhu doing a handstand on a surfboard. Honestly, this was in the tourist bureau when I went there. And it said, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. That was my welcome to India. So, my arm was really itchy while I was sitting. And then I rang the bell and it was gone. And I was disappointed. Because I wanted to scratch it. But it was gone when I rang the bell. So disappointing. You know, my suffering, I want. Yeah. Sometimes our sufferings we kind of get a bit attached to. Just notice when that happens. And don't do anything about it.
There's also the pleasure of scratching.
Yeah.
Not just the ending of suffering.
Yeah. Yeah, it's best just not to think about it. Because this is what I want to talk about. Like, what happens if we start thinking about it? What happens? And we start confusing our understanding with our state of being or our realization. And this is kind of what I want to talk about. Is the difference between our thoughts, even when they're really good thoughts, and our awakening, you know, our mind, you know, our actual life. And you know, there's a famous saying in Zen, and it goes way back to about 600, that painted cakes don't satisfy hunger, right? And you know, just think about it, staring at this nice picture. And that's to remind us that, you know, and I've talked about this a little bit last week, is the study of the Dharma is necessary and extremely limited. The practice of the Dharma is necessary, but also limited. This is also the other extreme that we can't fall into, is thinking all I need to do is meditate. Try. See what happens. Generally you'll get lost. You'll get lost because we need to understand also, before we sit on the cushion, why we're meditating. Like, why do you meditate? And why do you meditate? You know, why? And to ask that question sometimes, in order to invigorate, meaning to increase the paramita of energy and motivation. So if we understand what it's about, and how do we understand what it's about? Sitting is good and it can give us some insight, but there's a tradition it's coming from, and we need to also understand the tradition. Meditation didn't just happen. It came out of a whole tradition of the Buddha teaching about suffering and the end of suffering. So meditation is intimately related to the end of suffering. And we need to understand we're doing that in order to end suffering. You know, it's not about being relaxed or even just having clarity, but it's really about liberation, and we should remember that. And we remember that by, the study of the Dharma. Okay, it's important to understand the context, right, of this practice. So I'm a little bit wary and a little bit careful when meditation or mindfulness is taught without any context, right, without tradition or even history or learning, because it tends to just end after the session or be about my own kind of benefit. But really it's about a global point of view. Right. You're sitting to end suffering. But remember, it's not just about your suffering. It's all sentient beings. You know, it's the suffering of the world. And you're sitting to kind of let go of your limited sense of self, to open up to that sense of being with the world, sitting with the world. And if the world is suffering and there's suffering going on, I'm sitting with that. So you may be calm, but you keep on doing it because you know there's suffering going on. You know, when we talk about ending suffering, it's not only our own suffering. And that's an important background for our meditation practice. Otherwise, it can be a kind of limited thing. You know, and that's why we need to, I think, engage with the tradition to understand what this practice is based on. And it's based on bodhicitta, which is an enlightened mind. And the enlightened mind is actually an enlightened heart. It's trying to say, like, I'm, you know, intimately linked with all other beings. And if they're suffering, I am too. Right. So it's understanding our meditation practice in that sort of sense of what in Zen called emptiness. Meaning you're linked with everything else. You're not who you think you are. Meaning you include a lot more. So if you're sitting even alone in your room, you're sitting with all beings. And that can energize your practice. So that when you're going through a hard time, you remember, it's not just about me and my stuff. Right? That's just one part of it. But really, my meditation practice is much bigger than that. It's more than me. Yeah, and when you're sitting with the world, you're not just sitting with your own junk, which sometimes it feels like. You know, here I am again. You know, well, you know, it's not just about you. Okay, you're sitting not just for you. And if you can remember that in some way before you come to the cushion, then when you do experience a lot of, you know, self, it's like, you know, it's a part of it, but not all of it, right? So, that's why Dogen, much later, in response to that saying, he said, well, actually, painted cakes do satisfy hunger. Okay? You know, that's his sort of classic response to the tradition, is saying, yeah, well, you know, I'm going to quote the tradition and say it's wrong. But I can only do that because I know the tradition. So he quotes the tradition and says, yeah, actually it does satisfy hunger. Right? Did I read that quote by him last week? No? Okay, well, I guess I will. I get confused. Yeah, so here he says, he says, hearing and seeing should not be regarded as being more meritorious than the sutras. Okay, the sutras are the teachings of the Buddha, right? And he's saying, and sometimes we're like, all I need to do is be present, to hear what I hear, to see what I see. You know, the old Zen saying, when hungry, eat, when tired, sleep. Just be here now. Okay, but then Dogen reminds us that that hearing and seeing, you know, or just sitting, he's saying it's not so much better. It's not greater than, what he says, the sutras. And he says, it's individuals who deceive themselves. Sutras don't deceive, right? Like if we have a problem, it's our problem. We have to understand that, you know, there are these three aspects, these three problems that we encounter often, and the Buddha explained are kind of the base, you know, the basic, what do you call the poison? You know, the things that really create difficulties. And it's the mental tendency to go between like and dislike, attachment and aversion, you know, wanting, not wanting, love and hate. Okay? Belonging, other. Those types of things. You know, the mind is swinging in that pendulum all the time. And then in the middle, some people say it's indifference, but also it's delusion. Delusion or ignorance, which is really the start of all the problem. And what is this ignorance or delusion? And again, this is, you know, I'm talking about the teachings of the Buddha in order to inform our meditation practice. Because when we understand that it's based on a very rich teaching, then our practice is an expression of that. And it's not just, you know, breathing and, I don't know, relaxation, and then kind of my mind is now calm and clear. Well, no, it's actually more than that. Okay? And by referring and kind of understanding this, I think it will help expand our meditation practice when you feel like, what am I doing? Oh, I'm trying to respond to a very common experience in meditation that after a little while, you feel like you're going nowhere. Okay? Or you feel like it's just like not doing anything, or you feel like it's small or very limited, or like, what is this about? Or you just kind of lose that initial falling in love, you know? So you can fall in love with meditation, and you fall out of love. And usually the faster you fall in love, believe me, often, you know, faster you fall out. And how do we maintain some constancy in our practice, even when it feels like I'm in what's called a dry spell? Okay? But you gotta remember the big picture. Remember the big picture. What is this about and why? Why am I doing this? You should ask yourself frequently, you know, why am I doing this? Okay, is it just because I feel like I should do it, and I'll feel guilty if I don't because I've committed to it? Or, you know, it's alternative and it seems good, or it was good in the past, or whatever. The tradition is there to help inform us and to remind us why we're doing this. Okay, in meditation, we will intimately, right, encounter the mental tendency of like and dislike, the swinging between aversion, okay, and attachment. You will have thoughts, you will have experiences all the time, and when you slow down, like I say in walking meditation, the slower you go, the more you will notice. And when you're sitting, you're going nowhere, so you really slow down. Right? But your mind may be moving. Your mind is moving, of course. Okay? You know that one koan where Huineng, who was like the sixth patriarch of Zen, and he was walking, and he heard these two monks arguing about this flag flying in the wind. And one monk said, you know, the wind is blowing the flag. The wind's moving it. The wind is moving. And the other said, no, the flag is moving. And Huineng said, the wind is not moving and the flag's not moving, your mind is moving. Okay? It was your mind that was moving. And it's basically that Dharma teaching. And it's kind of a real basic one. Right? That what we're looking at, that we are responsible for our perceptions of the world. Okay? Our understanding of the world does not come from the world, it comes from us. Okay? And if you like something or you dislike something, it's not inherent in the object of the experience. It's coming from you. And when you just embrace that fact, and you in meditation see how the mind is always not only relating but reacting, with judging. And judgment can be I love, and judgment can be I hate. And it may not be that strong. It may just be like, you know, want and not want. You know, in subtle ways. Like I want to scratch my arm, right? Or I don't want it to itch. In fact, it's strange how in the same experience there's want and not want. I want to scratch, I don't want to itch, right? And then when the bell rang, I wanted to itch. So, you know, the mind is doing this all the time very quickly. When we slow down meditation, we start to notice how much it's not in our control. Okay? It just is happening. Now, we might say, wow, my mind is so out of control. You know, when I look at it, and some people say, wow, I can't believe my thoughts, they're going nuts. Right? Now, part of that, when I say the bigger picture, is understanding that you are not only your thoughts. Okay? So let them do that. The interesting thing about the Buddhist understanding of the senses, you know, touch and taste and hearing and, what is it, smell and, what's the other one? Touch? I said touch. Sight, yeah. Well, there's a sixth sense, and it's mind, it's thinking. Okay, there's thinking. Now, why is thinking a sixth sense? And it's not like, ooh, intuition. No, it's the sixth sense, meaning it's not a higher thing that is, you know, in control of everything. It's just something that is like, you know, I feel the air, I hear the air conditioning, you hear my voice, I see things, I have thoughts. I hear, I taste, I have thoughts. It's just another one of them. Why? To diminish a little bit the exaggerated importance we give it. That's why. Because we tend to rarefy, meaning we tend to elevate our thoughts. Why? Because it's me. Why? Because I identify with my thoughts. Because my thoughts are responsible for giving me my sense of self. Well, when you start to then consider it on an equal level with everything else going on, like my thoughts, can I view them as I view sounds coming from the outside? You know? And how can I do that? And can I also notice the judging and the swing between like and dislike as I hear the sounds from the outside? Meaning, I'm not going to get involved with those sounds. I hear them, I acknowledge them, and I notice if I start to talk about them in my mind or comment. Like, let's say a siren goes by, I'm like, ooh, it's really close, what's going on, where's it going, right? And as soon as I notice that, I'm like, okay, running commentary, back to my breath, right? But can we do that with, just about every thought? Now, it's more difficult when we have this natural tendency to really hold on to those thoughts as me. Me. These are not only thoughts happening. These are reflections of me. It's who I am. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because there's a strong attachment there. Attachment to a sense of self. And do you really want to be all your thoughts? Like, is that how you really want to define yourself? I'll just speak for myself. Obviously not. Right? So, what we understand in the context of the teachings and how it informs our practice and our lives is that there are certain understandings that will help us. Okay? And there's certain basic teachings that can remind us again and again of why we're doing what we're doing and what perspective can help make it bigger so we don't get stuck in the small stuff. Okay? First of all, there's what the Buddha called the 3 marks of existence, right? How, looked at existence and taught that, it's impermanent, okay? It's painful. It's difficult. There's a lot of difficulty. And it doesn't have inherent selfhood in anything. Nothing has inherent selfhood. What does that mean? Okay, there's no essence to anything. Like, this is a bowl, looks like a bowl. It's a bowl because I call it a bowl. Remember, I'm projecting bowl. But for a bird, it's a nest. Okay? So what is it really? There's no inherent bowlhood in this bowl. Okay? Just like there's no inherent self in you. But it has to do, or no inherent person, Daniel, sometimes I'm a father, sometimes, I'm a son, sometimes I'm a teacher, and sometimes I'm a student. Which one am I? Who's the real Daniel? What's the real bowl? Which one is it? That's not to say that when I'm using it, it's not a bowl, because relatively, when I ring it, it's a bowl. And, no one can say it's not. What did I just ring? A nest? No, I rang a bowl. Okay? But in this moment, for my use, and relative to my ideas, it's a bowl. But that doesn't make it a permanent bowl. Okay? In the future, when someone finds it and the world is destroyed and they need something to eat out of, it'll be an eating container. Okay? Maybe. Some, future Planet of the ape finds it and uses it for, food. Okay? Or, you see what I'm saying, right? Dogen says it using water, something even more basic than bowls. He has this great paragraph in the Mountains and Rivers Sutra, which is this beautiful sutra, very poetic. If you ever feel like reading some Dharma poetry, that you will understand very little, but that's okay. That's the point of it. Painted cakes don't satisfy hunger unless Dogen writes it. Now, he talks about water, and he says, water for a fish is home, and for a human it's a drink, and for a god it's ambrosia, nectar, and for, hungry ghosts it's urine, and for the, the hell beings it's fire, actually. And he says water is, all these different things. Will the real water please stand up? What is the real water? Something so basic. But with our ideas, we think we really do know and define the world and self it, okay? We give it a self. And the Dharma is saying, relatively, you are totally right. But absolutely, you are totally wrong, okay? And it's a relief to be wrong. It is such a relief to be wrong. Isn't it? I mean, think about it. If you tell someone, I'm right, let's say you're having an argument, and you say to them, I'm right, okay? How does that feel? Versus, you say to them, I'm wrong. That experience that in your next argument. And when you say to someone, I'm right, there's aggression there and you're holding on. When you say, I'm wrong, or I'm wrong, or like, whatever, say it to yourself, maybe, not to them. But there's release. Okay, there's release. It is a gift to be wrong. And so when the Dharma teaches us that we're wrong, not just in an argument, but about everything, you know, what a relief. It is such a relief that I don't have to be right and I don't have to protect anything anymore and defend it like it's threatening my existence. What a relief. I don't have to expend so much energy in a defensive way of trying to like protect and build walls around my sense of self. I can just be wrong all the time. Well, more the better, right? Because that frees me. Yeah, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about being wrong. You know, I'm actually wrong about being wrong. That's true. And wrong about that. They call it the emptiness of emptiness, actually, in Zen. The emptiness of emptiness. Like you're stuck on emptiness, you think everything's empty. You know what? That idea you have is empty. Right? That's empty. You know? Because you might get stuck on this great idea. But it's your idea, remember? And any idea you have from the teachings are painted cakes. Meaning, don't confuse it with your direct experience of reality. Right? Because if you do, you're going to be waving this banner of truth, and it's going to be fake. Yeah. I'll give you another example. Did I tell you about the Montreal deli? No? So, I was on the phone with some guy, and I don't remember why. Maybe it's about a telephone. I was getting like some service for my telephone, and then he switched to English like they always do, thinking they're going to help me, but they're actually hurting me because that means that I'm always having to speak English for 20 years in Israel. Yes, because everybody then tries to do me a favor. So he switches to English, and you know, we talked a bit about Canada, and he learned that I was in. This is all just about getting my phone fixed. And he learns that I was in Montreal in my first studies, and he starts to ask me about if do I know this deli, Cass's Deli? I'm like, of course I know Cass's Deli. Everybody knows Cass's Deli. It's like the main Jewish deli in Montreal, and it's like, yeah, these corned beef sandwiches. That's when I was not a vegetarian. And these corned beef sandwiches, you know, they're so big I could eat like a quarter of it. You know, these huge sandwiches, and he talked about. And then he was explaining to me like how they prepare the whatever meat and whatever. And wow! And he talked about these pictures on the wall. He knew the deli. It's like, wow! And so I asked him at the end. So when were you there? I mean, I've been there. I could see it. He said, "Oh, I saw a documentary." I'm like, I don't believe it. Are you serious? I was actually speechless. I was like, wow. Like, I was sitting in it with you. I was like sitting. I knew which table I was at. And so did you. But, painted cakes. Painted corned beef sandwiches. Okay? It happens all the time. And for him, it was such a vivid experience. Right? It really was. He doesn't even need to go there. Right? I'm sure.
He was enlightened by the documentary.
Yeah. Yeah, it can happen. By the idea of the documentary. Yeah, so how do we transform that? Okay. And all the teachings of the Dharma, you see, it's one thing to learn about a Delhi in Montreal, but when we're, and that's okay. Like, I mean, he doesn't need the experience of corned beef sandwich. He really doesn't. But we do need the experience of enlightenment and of understanding deeply, okay, impermanence and non-self, and understanding, you know, when the Buddha said, I teach one thing, dukkha and the end of dukkha, or suffering and the end of suffering, or pain and unsatisfactoriness, and how then to end that, dis-ease, the disease of the mind, right? We're all mentally ill, and the Buddha is the doctor, and he diagnosed the disease, which was our, you know, constant suffering coming from attachment and aversion and delusion, okay? And then he gave us a path to basically cure that disease, okay? And the path is the treatment. And he gave a prognosis of saying, you know, you practice it and you will be liberated. And why? He wasn't teaching us from a medical textbook, right? But from his own experience. So, this is what we have to learn, is that, yes, the words of the teachings, the sutras, from a non-self-deceived way, but take it and make it Buddha, right? How do we take those teachings? You need the teachings. That's what I'm trying to emphasize, is that you do need the teachings in order to energize your practice and to give it context and meaning. Right? Otherwise, we're sitting, and believe me, you will become discouraged. It is inherent in the practice that you will be discouraged. But with the teachings, you will understand your discouragement as an aspect of your own sense of self and not a reflection of the practice. And that discouragement will become your practice, right? It'll actually become something that you care for, right? And something that can motivate you, just as every experience can. Because you see it as a reflection of the teachings and of your mind always going in these reactions of aversion and attachment. You know, I don't want boredom, I want calm, peace, and awareness. I don't want distraction, I want, you know, focus and concentration. I don't want anger and impatience, and I want samadhi, I want peace and love and loving kindness. Yeah, you can see in meditation the mind is going in those, you know, tendencies. And they're so basic. And when we identify them, and the Buddha identifies them, and we understand, we see it in the teaching, is like, yeah, that's what's happening. So that sense of knowing, you know, it will set you free. Right? It really will. Because then it's not like your problem. It's global. It's everyone's problem. Right? The Buddha wasn't just describing you as a person. He was describing you as a human being. And as a human being, you will experience all of these, you know, hindrances. And okay. Okay. It's like a doctor who can identify your problem. Not knowing what the problem is more difficult than finally getting the diagnosis and saying, okay, you know what, now I actually know what this is. I mean, if you ask someone who's like has a lot of physical symptoms and goes to a lot of doctors and doesn't get any answer or gets different answers, that's much more stressful than just the symptoms themselves. Because what do I do with it? How do I deal? How do I go in the future? It's all like the unknown is scary. When I know, like it is the mental nature of the self to want, not want, and to be confused about what will really make me happy. That's the delusion. The delusion, which is the third poison, is being confused about my sense of self. Taking me as solid and things from the outside as satisfying me and reinforcing my sense of self. That is a basic delusion, is in a belief in a sense of self, a belief in myself, okay, as solid, well-defined, and needing this. Right? I need this to make me, we don't really say it this way, make me happy or to make me me. Okay, so there are these certain cravings and desires that the Buddha pointed out. Okay, there's a desire for sense pleasure. We all know that. And it's not just about like any sensual pleasure. It's just about like being cool in the heat, being warm in the cold, being not sleepy, you know, and aversion to pain and attachment to pleasure. That's the first type of desire. Okay? But there's another real interesting form of desire that the Buddha pointed out, and he said it's the desire to be. The desire to be. And what does that mean, the desire to be? Well, it wasn't necessarily to be alive, because you're alive, all right? And yeah, there is a sort of almost instinct to be alive. It's to be somebody, right? I want to be somebody, you know? And I'm not even saying I want to have status and power and money. I mean, that's already, you know, beyond. And we see that and we mock it and we say, oh yeah, all these politicians just chasing after their own power, or, you know, billionaires just chasing after. And, you know, in the pantheon of existence, Buddhist existence, there's these 6 levels. There are like these gods and goddesses, and basically they're describing like billionaires who, you know, they get to 1 and they want 10 because their neighbor has 10 billion. So, you know, it's jealousy. Fine, we know that. But the desire to be, right, to be a self, is not just a self in general. There's no abstract self here, okay? There's no such thing as an abstract self. There's you, okay, who truly feels that this will make you unhappy and this will make you happy, okay? And so you invest a lot. And then there's the whole, you know, mental somersaults that happen when those are not fulfilled, okay? Or with the truth of anicca, of impermanence, when what you had passes. You know, who am I without, you know, my job, my spouse, my children, my money, my possessions? Who am I? Right? Now we kind of say, oh yeah, I know that. Wait till it happens. Okay, wait till it happens. Loss. Okay, and this is why the Dalai Lama wakes up every morning and he said to, in teaching, he said, you know, I don't get out of bed until I've contemplated my own death. Okay? Until I've contemplated my own death. What does that mean to contemplate your own death? It means your sense of self, whoever you think you are, is going to go. Okay? It's going to go. And then you get up. Right? And then you get up. Okay? Ajahn Chah taught it with the glass, right? And so basically when someone asked him for a summary of the teachings, and he said, he picked up a glass and he said, you know, when I see this glass, it's already broken. And therefore, because it's already broken, right, it's really precious to me. One of my favorite haiku poets, EQ, on his 50th birthday, which back then was pretty old, he wrote this haiku. You know, turning 50, bright blue sky, from now on it's all profit. Right, it's all profit. Because he expected to be dead by then. So from that day on, it was all a bonus. It was all bonus. He didn't have to prove anything. He didn't need to be a good poet. He didn't need to be anyone. It was just profit. It was all, you know, I'm not going to say it was all good, because it wasn't. I'm sure there were days he woke up and he was sick, he was miserable, he was bitten by lice, read his poetry, it's all there. But it was all profit. Can we have that? That even when I'm itchy or I'm upset or whatever, that's still profit? It's still a bonus? Even the difficulties? If I let go of my expectations according to my sense of self, or what should be, and what will make me, me? Then what? That's a koan. Meaning, it's a question to ask ourselves again and again as a form of practice. You know? What makes me me? What makes me me? So, you know, we have this sort of, you could say, dual approach in the Dharma. The scriptures and the sutras and the teachings are really important, because why else would the Buddha teach them, and why were they recorded and written down and passed down and preserved and written, handwritten, and, you know, sacred for millennia? And painted cakes don't satisfy hunger. And if you meet the Buddha on the way, kill the Buddha. And all of these iconoclastic statements saying, forget it. Yeah, I think I read last week, but maybe I didn't because my memory is horrible. Which was Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma said he was the first patriarch of Zen. So back in the 400s, he came from India into China. And he said, the true way is sublime. It cannot be expressed in language. What use are the scriptures? But someone who sees his own nature finds a way, even if he can't read a word. Someone who sees his own nature is a Buddha. The ultimate truth is beyond words. Doctrines are words, not the way. The way is wordless. Words are illusions. If you know that everything comes from the mind, don't become attached to words. Once you're attached, you're unaware. But once you see your own nature, the entire canon, all the scriptures, become too much. Thousands of sutras amount only to a clear mind. That's good, okay? But that's Bodhidharma. That's not you. And it's not me, right? The teachings may get us there one day, where we can say, you know what? I've had enough words. But we need to be sincere, to know that, you know what? I need some more guidance. I need more teachings. I need some structure, okay? And I need some meaning to my practice. And that's what the Dharma is there for. And one day you may say, okay, I'm taking a break from all the words, But before you do that, use the words. They're there. They're there. In fact, what was the first printed book in history? The first printed book. The first book ever printed. Was it the Bible of the Gutenberg Press? No. It was way later. That was 1,000 years after the first book, which was in 1868. Actually, 800 years. 1868 in China. What was the first printed book? It was the Diamond Sutra. Okay? First recorded printed material. Right? Meaning the Dharma of all things they wanted to print so that lots of people could read it. Here we have what's not an irony or contradiction, but what's a reality. And it's recognizing skillful means that, get the words out there. And when you know the words, you can forget the words. But you can't forget the words before you know them. Forget them after you know them. And what does the Diamond Sutra say? Well, here's the famous quote we know. So you should view this fleeting world. A star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, a dream. That was the first printed book in history. And it's reminding us that we should review even those words as just a fleeting dream. Flash of lightning in a summer night. But without the words, we wouldn't even know that. So, learn well and then forget it. And trust your own experience. So, before we finish to sit, does anyone have, at this point, anything you want to say, or share, or related or unrelated? Question or comment? Don't be shy. Who's shy?
On Saturday, we read here a text, a talk by Ajahn Chah, and he was talking about, in practice, the desire to be more calm, more focused, less stressed, and all that. So he mentioned, a desire with wisdom, okay, I want to guide my life towards, I don't know, more tranquility and peace, but not like a desire without wisdom, just wanting to be calm all the time, feeling good. So it was interesting to talk about it here.
Yeah. Yeah, what's problematic sometimes is when we use the same words, like desire and desire, wise desire, unwise desire. Because desire has a negative connotation a little bit. Sometimes I think the better English word is aspiration. To have an aspiration which is like a goal, okay, that's guiding you, or guiding light in your life, is an aspiration. And the difference between an aspiration and desire is generally pretty clear when you look at the intention. When the intention is more self-centered for oneself, it's a desire. And desires don't necessarily benefit others so much, but it's for one's own benefit. Aspiration takes you outside of yourself. It may include you, but it involves more than you. So I think aspiration, that's the way, that kind of inner test we can do. Like, who is this for? And if it's for everyone, then it's an aspiration. If it's pretty much for me, sometimes that's okay. Like, you just accept, I don't know. Like, if you're making choices on an individual level, apple juice or orange juice, which you want, right? I desire orange juice. It's a small desire. It's not going to harm anything. Remember, avoid evil, do good, purify your mind. Sometimes small desires are not causing any harm. They're just small, and we can notice them and accept them as relative, right? So also, don't think that you shouldn't have any desires on the relative level, because that would be kind of a mistaken sense of denial, right? Or kind of suppression. No. Have desires, but don't be attached to them. The problem is not with the desire. The problem is with the attachment we have to the desire, and it's hope that it'll continue and not be frustrated. So let's say I want orange juice, and then I open the fridge and it's not there. I'm like, damn! Or, okay, what is here? Or, I guess when I go shopping today, I will get some orange juice. Or I'm like, what happens? What is my reaction? That's where we understand the dynamics of desire. So again, don't think that Buddhism is teaching don't have any, wants and needs. Because that's sort of like, what is that? That's show. That's a show. Okay? But it's really about our relationship to our desires. And most poignantly, or most directly, when desires are frustrated. When we cannot fulfill our desires, then what is your reaction? And if it's wise mind of acceptance, or if it's reacting mind of like and dislike, then we can understand what kind of work we need to do. So yeah, desire, aspiration, relationship to desire, accepting the relative, self, and understanding that there can be skillful means with a lot of things. So yeah. This side? So, let's take half a minute to just let all the words pass. So let's end by arousing in our hearts the commitment to take refuge in the triple gem of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Now, we understand that in many different ways. And the Buddha being the reality of enlightened mind, your own true nature, your own mind, you're taking refuge in that. The nature of your mind you trust and you honor. As well as the historical Buddha, who is a great teacher, not a prophet, not a god, a great teacher. Teachings are important. And we take refuge in the Dharma, which is the teaching that was given over. So those teachings are there as a guide to our lives in order to help us be more free and to have more clarity. Let us use and engage with the teachings wisely wherever we find them. There's the formal Dharma and informal Dharma. There's the Dharma in the scriptures and the sutras and teachings and books. And there's the informal Dharma of the lessons you learn during your day. May we find the Dharma everywhere we go and take refuge in it as our enlightened practice. And finally, we take refuge in the Sangha. This is a community of practitioners. And this room is quite wonderful. Outside of this room, it can be equally wonderful, and we will take refuge in finding Sangha wherever we go, whether it's formal Sangha, like here, or informal Sangha. Whoever you're with becomes the person you need to practice with and the person who will support your practice even in a difficult way.